I had done some consulting and done some individual work, but I missed having a team. I really enjoyed building a team, leading a team, drawing out the talents of the team. I think that's the most fun part. I think witnessing how these disparate people from different backgrounds and different skill sets can come together and deliver. The biggest lesson for me is how important that was. Early in your career, you're motivated by your boss, you're motivated by the problem, but really it's in those later years when you're building teams, you're motivated by the team. You don't want to let them down. Like I didn't want to let my bosses down early on. You want to be there for them. You want to see them grow. And I love really honest people, direct people. I value that greatly. And so I appreciate hardworking people who really care about each other and are super honest.
In a corporate world where all employees have great leaders with no egos that create fun cultures where people can do their best work, the employees and companies thrive while doing great things for the customers, themselves, and each other.
Well, we know that rarely happens. I'm Jeff Palacio. I have been a leader for over 40 years for every t-shirt size company, from small 16 employees to extra large over 1 million. Please join me while I interview outstanding leaders that will share stories of great leadership and not so great. It will help you become a better leader while poking fun about all the crazy shit that happens in corporate America.
Hi, I'm Joe Deshawn, and welcome to the Corporate Couch with Jeff Palacio. Today, Jeff is interviewing Steve McClain. Steve's career includes more than 30 years of diverse experience in marketing and strategy development for large corporations, as well as entrepreneurial startups. His career has been focused on consumer marketing and business development for top brands like Sprint, Ford, ADP, and USAA. Steve joined Unbound, an international nonprofit organization based in the Kansas City area, as Chief Marketing Officer, where he leads a team of marketers, business development, creative services, and media relations professionals who are focused on creating sustainable growth for Unbound. Prior to joining Unbound, Steve was the Senior Vice President of American Century Investments, where he was responsible for overseeing the retail division, which served over 600,000 individual investors and had $36 billion in assets under management. Steve is a graduate of Rockhurst University and earned an MBA from Webster University. He lives in the Kansas City area with his wife, Mary Beth. They have raised 5 children together and are enjoying a life stage that includes grandchildren. Let's listen as Jeff talks to Steve.
Steve, I'd like to welcome you this morning to the Corporate Couch. Thanks for coming on.
Oh, Jeff, thanks for having me.
Oh man, I could hardly sleep last night.
Yeah.
So full disclosure, Steve and I worked together in the early Sprint days, which I call the fun days at Sprint. So we've known each other for a while, but really I'm very honored to have you on the podcast. So thank you.
I appreciate it. I've had an opportunity to listen to a couple of the podcasts, and you're doing a really great job. I love that someone's unlocking these stories. I'm a big believer that there's a lot of lessons in stories. So I think that's a terrific idea.
Well, thank you, Steve. That's very nice. And I will send you that payment we talked about before we got on the recording. Well, I'd like to start out just with kind of 2 questions, just to kind of break the ice a little bit. But one, we've been now 3 years, almost exactly. Today's March 21st, 2023, 3 years into the pandemic.
Yep.
And we're now used to Zoom calls and meetings. So what is the craziest attire you've ever seen someone wear on a professional Zoom call, or lack of attire?
Oh, yeah. Well, I have a good one on that one. Tara Hefner, who is on our team, is very, very funny individual, and she will do anything to break up the tension. Early on, she was wearing a different hat every Zoom meeting. I think she ran out of hats, but probably one of the funniest, she appeared randomly in a team huddle with a Chewbacca outfit on and full gear and the voice and everything. So everybody remembers that.
Love it.
I think she proceeded to share a different wig, a different hat, whatever it was, to kind of break up the crowd. It was always a lot of fun, and laughter's always been a big part of the workplace. And I think sometimes people take themselves too seriously, but having people who have a good sense of humor, despite all the tension of the changes that we were going through, made a big difference.
Love it. Love it. I've been 3 years into the pandemic. I don't know how many Zoom meetings that translates in. And my claim to fame is I've never wore a baseball cap to any meeting. So I'm pretty.
Well, that's pretty good.
Bad
well,
hair.
You got the hair.
I've had bad hair like today, but yeah, I did wear a Mahomes wig. It came with a headband, and
Sure.
just as a joke. So that I've never revealed that before. So there you go.
That's awesome.
So the other thing I like to dig into a little bit is just, people's childhood kind of formulate how they, act and what they do as adults. So when you were a kid growing up, and you grew up in Kansas City, correct?
I did.
Yeah.
Yes. I was born in Detroit, but my family, we were all raised here for the most part. So
yeah, very nice. Very nice. So growing up in KC, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Oh, wow. It was a little bit of everything. I was all over the map. I had no real strong draw to any particular profession, obviously influenced by a lot of different people at different stages. At one point, I wanted to be a teacher and really felt like that was an area I wanted to go, and influenced probably by some of the teachers that I had early on. Later on, actually in college, I was working at a failed savings and loan back in the savings and loan crisis. It had just come out of receivership, and there were a couple of FBI agents that were in the accounting department where I worked. And I was seriously thinking about, the FBI through the college years, and grateful I didn't go down that path, but they were terrific individuals and inspired me to look into that. So oddly enough, as I was in those college years, I still wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do, but it was the early 80s, and the only people that were getting hired were accountants. And I wasn't a natural at that. I loved, finance and what went into decisions around accounting. But, I went that path because I felt like that would get me an employment after I graduated. So.
Yeah, career strategy many of us use, including myself. Not with
Get hired.
Yeah, exactly. So I have to get this out before we go on further. But I joke around, and when I introduce you to people, I always say your middle name is, well, he's a great guy. He's a great guy, McClain, because if you ask people, if you meet somebody that worked at American Century, I said, oh, do you know Steve McClain? Oh, yes, Stevie's a great guy. Like everybody, it's 100% of people. So were you always a nice person growing up, or did you have a dark side that you had a turnaround that you actually almost beat a kid up to death, like in fourth grade?
I probably served time somewhere along the line. No, yeah, I think I grew up in a big Irish Catholic family. I was 6 of 7 kids, and you had to get along and also distinguish yourself from everyone else in some way. And seeing the different talents in my family and how each individual sibling brought something unique, you felt compelled to, be your own person as well. But that imprinting of, I grew up in a really kind, loving family, and that made a big difference. Parents were amazing, and all the life lessons that are packed in those early years were to my benefit.
Very, very nice. So, so we got into why you picked accounting. What were your kind of interests in high school? Did you play sports or?
Not at all. I wasn't gifted with athleticism like you, Jeff. I was literally went to school, came home, and actually my thing in high school and even grade school, I always felt comfortable in a job. I started mowing lawns when I was young. My brothers had lawn mowing business, and kind of stepped into that after they moved on to high school and college, and then went on to the grocery store and, standard kid stuff. Left school, went to the part-time job. And I actually always loved working. It was something that gave me self-esteem and made me feel like I was part of a team. And, there were certainly those days grinding it out on, mowing lawns or in the grocery store, but that had a huge influence on me. So, and I always had cash in my pocket, which I liked. So that influenced me a lot, but that was kind of, I think, my thing. And it influenced a lot what would come later.
Now, I'm going to reveal some inside information here that I know based on recent email exchange. So you're Irish Catholic.
Yeah.
So on St. Patty's Day, you go to an Italian restaurant. I mean, what's up with that?
I did. I mean, it's the road less traveled. I hate crowds. I like going, I hate standing in line for anything. So I was with the Italians and I was drinking wine. You were teasing me like, did you do the Irish bombs? And I was like, not tonight.
No Irish car bombs. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, maybe we'll do those on another episode
Yes,
later
exactly.
on. The drinking, the Irish-Italian drinking
Yeah.
episode. So what was your first job out of college and how'd you get it?
Oh, my first job actually happened in college relative to my career. It was United Telecom. I was an intern, fortunate enough to be picked by the audit department to be an intern. And I absolutely knew nothing. I mean, I had a mentor tell me, they're going to carry you for a year. Just know that you will know nothing. And I certainly delivered on that. And I was fortunate enough when I graduated that they took me on full time and did audit for about 2 years. And really a great way to learn the business and be exposed to really sharp people. But I was not a very good auditor. I was probably the world's worst. I would have to chase down exceptions and reconciling items. And I was 22 at the time and, 20 as an intern. And the team would go out for a beer. I couldn't even go get a beer because I wasn't even 21 in the first internship I had. So, but a great team of people. They were all young professionals wanting to start their career and worked really hard, and they taught me a ton. So it started me at United Telecom, which for a lot of people may not know was the predecessor to Sprint. And after my stint in the audit staff, I had an opportunity to go over to the fledgling Sprint startup side of that business, which was really a wild time.
Yeah, that was a crazy time. So after audit and you went to Sprint, were you in the accounting finance department?
Yes, I spent about 5 years in finance and accounting, did a lot of financial reporting, and I, learned a ton there. I think it kind of took the mystery out of numbers and knowing how to run a P&L or look at a P&L and analyze a P&L and a balance sheet. All that was really critical in those at that time. And I think, learned very quickly how important that is to guide a business and understand what's happening inside the business. But my frustration with it was all the decisions had already been made. I wanted to get out in front where the decisions were being made and decided, are we going to do this or that? And the challenge I found with accounting is it had already been made. We were just booking what had been decided. And I was very interested in getting more proactive into the decision-making side of the business.
So you were driven by that. So you basically wanted to get closer to the customer strategy. So, how did you navigate from accounting finance to, I believe you went to the marketing database side?
Yeah, it was through analytics, and it was really understanding numbers, and felt like that was a great bridge. And back in the day, Sprint was one of those great big brands that poured huge dollars in big brand advertising, pin drop and everything else. I mean, millions and millions of dollars. And Jeff, like you, I was intrigued by, isn't there a smarter way of doing this? And how can we start to use the power of data and analytics to make better decisions about where we invest our marketing dollars? And had I not had some of that finance background, I don't think I would have been as effective as a marketer. And Harry Campbell was one of those mentors I had that early on, he was a boss. He said, you got to know your numbers. And he was one of the best marketers I was exposed to. And he really emphasized that to our team. And I felt strong in that space. I felt like I could hold my own. And I've seen marketers through the years not as comfortable with numbers. And I think it hurts them.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, everybody wants to have a Super Bowl ad, but you're paying a lot for, does it move the needle? Does it
Yeah.
build better customer relationship? So was Harry your first boss coming over from accounting?
Oh gosh, no, it's a funny story. Probably one of the most dramatic experiences I had with the series of leaders I had. I think I calculated how many leaders I've had. I've had over 40 leaders in my career. But in that given year, because of reorganizations and restructurings and a variety of other things, that year I think I had 5 leaders in one performance year. And Harry was one of those. And it was sad. I only worked for him like 2 months. And I think he moved on to another team. And so it was very brief, but very impactful, as were a lot of the leaders I had at Sprint. They were always very, very smart, very challenging, and caused you to think and adapt. And I really appreciated that time.
Yeah, that's interesting. I once at a meeting when I was at Beringer Ingelheim, I counted how many people I had reported to at that point. But yeah, Sprint was, my first 6 months at Sprint, I had 5 different managers.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
it was a
It goes so fast.
crazy time. So
Yeah.
besides Harry, who were some of your big mentors at Sprint?
Oh, I think one of the biggest and the longest time period in different jobs and situations was Cindy Rock. Cindy Rock was a phenomenal leader. She started out with me in audit. She was a couple years ahead of me, and looked out for me, and was just a terrific person. And actually returned to Cindy a couple of times in my career at Sprint. And she obviously went on to some really big roles at Sprint, namely around customer care. And Cindy just was the ultimate in people leadership and pragmatism. And she wanted to get stuff done. And she really wanted to break down the problem and understand what was driving it. But she was very close to her people, and wanted to see progress. So you felt like a lot of good leaders, you don't want to disappoint them. You want to work hard for them. You want to help deliver. And she rewarded you with a lot of support and encouragement along the way.
Who was the worst boss you had at Sprint?
Oh gosh. One comes to mind. I'll spare the name, probably still here in town. But I think even as you've exposed on your podcast, sometimes you learn more about yourself when you have a bad boss, and during that, and where do you draw from the strengths inside, but also what not to do and what you don't appreciate. This particular leader was super disengaged, all about, the structure and the hierarchy, and read his Wall Street Journal every morning for 3 hours, and then proceeded to stick his head up and come out and then go back to his office. He was very disengaged. So I think someone who's going to roll up their sleeves and be with you in the problem solving and checking in on the teams, that's what matters.
So besides mentors, I think you're considered a great leader, and people love to work for you and do great things. So, besides, mentors, what else honed your leadership skills?
Well, I think, my parents were huge influences on me. My dad was, he had an incredible career. He started out as an office boy in the railroad industry, worked at the same place for 50 years. He rose to the executive level, and through a lot of hard work, had an unbelievable work ethic. And what I admired most about him is his persistence and his ability to relate to people. He was very much a people person. He retired 3 times. He was called back 2 times to return and help with a particular strategic problem. And I learned more just sitting across the table from my dad. And he was an incredible storyteller, often in parable form. I'd come in and share a struggle I was having at work, and he would harken back to 1971 with something, whether I was complaining about the deregulation of the telecom industry, he would liken it to a story of the deregulation of the railroad industry. And he just had something for every scenario, and it kind of put a perspective on it. So if I was ever struggling with anything, it was showing up and just listening to him that I would be inspired. And he gave you a sense of perspective that the small stuff doesn't matter, and that particular day's worry isn't going to matter in 10 years.
Yeah, very nice. Sounds like your dad was like one of your heroes growing up.
Oh my gosh, she was amazing. And my mom as well. She was a quiet, humble, hardworking, very devoted to family, and taught the value of working. They were both Depression era kids, and so they always lived very humbly and fully expecting that the Depression could return, and very rarely serve themselves. They were always about sacrificing with family.
So out of the 7 kids on the McClain family basketball team, were you one of the starters, or you were one of the 2 that came off the bench?
Oh, I think all of our talent in basketball and any sport went to my little sister. She dethroned me. I was the baby for 6 years. She came along much later in life, and she was just such a gift to the family. But it was her that got all the athleticism, and she ended up being a really unbelievable basketball player and volleyball player through the high school years, and probably could have gone into college, but she was done by that time. And so I tease her, that the reason she was so good was because I was out on the basketball court showing her how to do it. So, but she beat me quite often, I can tell you that.
Yeah, I mean, sprint was fun. I mean, I think we were a little ahead of our time. It was myself, you, and Mark Vobril, and we kind of got the one sprint thing, not conceptually going. We actually started a database marketing forum, so that was really fun. We brought all the divisions together.
Yeah.
Sprint PCS, which was not part of Sprint at the time, and really we started trying to do some things around that one sprint idea. So that was fun. You mentioned United Telecom, but we had local, we had Sprint International, various different divisions. So it was an interesting time. So so you spent 14 years there. What made you leave Sprint?
Well, it was interesting because you recall that it was such an intensely competitive marketplace. The MCI WorldCom, the AT&T battles, price wars, and you just grew up with that kind of mindset that you had to stay above and better than the competition. And it was one of those critical moments where I was being interviewed for a particular role outside of Sprint, and someone said, "Yeah, it's great you've done all this at Sprint, but what have you done without the big brand of Sprint behind your name?" I was like, "Well, nothing. I mean, I've always been here. This is what I grew up with." And they said, "Well, if I were you, I'd go out and get something that's a little bit different than that." And so at the time, I was in partnership marketing, and it came to do some partnership work with a firm out of Boston. It was an upstart company, and it was actually a great group of guys. And it was the go-go, 1999 into 2000. And the founder said, "Why don't you come work with us?" And so I was like, I live in Kansas City, and this was before Zoom and all this incredible technology that you can connect with people. And I said, "Well, I'm not moving to Boston." And he said, "That's all right. You can do it remote." And so I took a business development role there. And I really wanted to be on the ground floor of something. I love building. I love seeing things transform and change over time. And so it was an opportunity for me to work with a very small group of people. And they were all super smart guys, and just had an unbelievable time. Worked there for 4 years. And it was through the tech bubble burst, and everybody was migrating to the smaller upstarts. We almost didn't make it, but ultimately the firm was sold for $240 million to Pitney Bowes. And it was just a great experience to be able to witness that and be part of it. So, and I commuted to Boston much more often than I thought I would. And I'd leave on a Sunday night and come back on a Thursday night and work from home on Friday. And was on the road probably 3 weeks out of the month during that 4-year period.
Wow. So you go, so you're working for Sprint, probably, I'm going to guess at that time, 50,000 employees, give or take, 45,000 total. and you go to an upstart company, entrepreneurial. So what was your biggest surprise kind of making that transition?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think one of the biggest surprises that I had was that not everybody had learned what we had learned at Sprint. You and I have talked about this. The conveyor belt at Sprint it was so high speed and there was so much going on at once that the lessons were multiplied in that kind of an environment. And oftentimes I would go into that smaller environment. And these guys were all Harvard and Dartmouth grads. I mean, they're really sharp guys, but they hadn't been exposed to business conditions and situations that were life lessons at Sprint all those years. So I think, like my college years, like my Sprint years, I underestimated how much I had been exposed to, how much I learned. And everybody comes with a different perspective and a different background and frame of reference. But those years were incredibly formative and just terrific training ground.
Yeah, 100%. Stuff we learned through the University of Excellence, total quality management, things I still use today. So
Yeah.
I totally agree. Was that your first role in sales, this business development role for this company?
It was. We had a pipeline responsibility and we had a venture capital company, checking in every month. Are you getting your sales? Are you getting the contracts? And B2B kind of sales model. And it was 3 to 4 year kind of cycle that, to convert customers, and we had to reduce that significantly down. And fortunate for that business, we had a cash cow side of the business, and then we have this emerging product and emerging division that we were trying to build at the same time. So we were able to survive the tech bubble burst because of that cash business, and ended up growing that new division on a very lean model.
So you moved from a finance accounting role to kind of marketing and sales analytics to marketing. Kind of that's been your career arc so far. You get into sales. Who was your mentor there? How did you go about learning, to become a great business development person?
Yeah, I think it was a combination of people. I had a boss at Sprint. Her name was Terry Morrow. She was very good at understanding kind of what, through the eyes of other people and partners, what they would need and want, and how they can come together with a common goal. At the end of it, it's relationships, and it's truly understanding how you can come together and help somebody else out. And at the same time, be a guide for what's needed within the organization. I always believe that if you're coming together with another organization, you can't just go with what their agenda is. You have to represent your firm and what they can do and what they can't do. I think you have to really understand inside the organization what you're capable of doing and what's not possible, because if the expectations aren't managed with that customer relationship, you're going to end up getting people very upset. So I loved being able to get out and meet new people. It was hard. It was hard because they ask hard questions. They expect a lot, way more than maybe you're capable of. And it's kind of bringing those two individual groups together and trying to make something happen. My dad always used to say, nothing happens until somebody sells something. And he was a great reminder of that. And he was right. I mean, you can sit there and talk all day long, but if you don't close business, you're not going to end up, having anything to support it.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's a great reminder. I love that quote. So the company gets bought out. Is that when you came back? Well, not came back. You obviously did not move, but is that when you went to American Century Investments?
Yes. Yeah. So I picked up from there to join American Century, and I had been a client of theirs for years and always admired the quality of the organization, great reputation. It was one of those reasons that I did come back. I wanted to get off the road, and took a position a little bit less than what I wanted, but I felt like it was worth it to be in Kansas City. I was responsible for coming into the retail division as a leader of acquisition. Fortunately, I had an opportunity about 6 months later to step into the VP of marketing role and for that retail division. And it just was a wild ride ever since then. So had some wonderful leaders, wonderful opportunities, and they placed a lot of trust in me. I think the challenge with that was going into a completely different industry, most of the people in that industry grow up in that industry, much like telecom. But I felt like I brought a consumer mindset to that role. And I think you can get a little too into your own products and lose sight of who the customer is. And I think that was something that I was able to bring to the role.
Yeah, so obviously we both worked at Sprint, now T-Mobile, but you're basically working for two iconic Kansas City-based companies, right? So what was the big difference in the cultures of American Century and Sprint?
Yeah, that's good. I think both had strong Midwestern values, and I think also really, really smart people that just motivated you to be as smart and work as hard. So I really appreciated that. I think they both had some coastal influences. Coming from the East Coast, coming to the Midwest, there was that element, and I love that mix of folks. I think the most stark difference between the two was American Century was privately held. Sprint was very public. American Century had a lower profile than Sprint, of course, but quality reputation. And I think a big distinction with American Century was their strong presence of their founder, Jim Stowers. He was just an amazing guy and such a spirited element inside the building and influenced so much of the day-to-day work at American Century. And so I think outside of the industries being wildly different from one another, I think it was that strong legacy that he brought that was very different from Sprint.
Yeah, I think, again, having not worked at American Century, I think part of it was, the public versus private. But I also think, and, I'd love for you to expand on it, since Sprint was a very hard driving culture, a lot of type A personalities trying to build, fiefdoms, get more people so they can move up the corporate ladder. And sometimes that, was with proving the business, in mind, but sometimes not.
Yeah.
And I think ACI was, especially in the early days, I'm not so sure now, but American Century had the culture that was built on James Stowers' personality, right? But I'd love for you to expand on that. What were the culture differences like there?
I think the extreme client focus, doing the right thing for the client, he instilled that in the organization, and that nothing matters compared to that. And if you're aligned with helping them and meeting their needs, that was stated early on from his perspective. He witnessed how many financial services companies go astray by trying to drive what their own agenda is. And he felt like if you stay close to that customer and understand their needs, you're going to be successful. And so they really live that. And I think all the employees really aligned around that. And I do feel like culturally, just as smart of people work there, and certainly good leaders and bad leaders, just like at Sprint. And lessons learned in that environment were incredible.
Yeah, and I think the other thing, I think American Century was on the kind of really a pioneer in taking care of the employees. I mean, they were ahead of their time just with the benefits, obviously knowing you and a lot of other people that worked at American Century. And any thoughts on that?
Yeah, there's no doubt. The employee was considered really an associate inside the organization. They treated them with a great deal of respect, very attuned to what their needs are. I know Diane Gallagher's there in HR now. She's a terrific person, great business leader, very much a caring type individual. We had some wonderful leaders overall that doing the right thing motivated people. And I think they guided their decisions around employees that way. Doesn't mean there weren't tough days. We went through that horrific 2008 financial crisis and had to make some really, really tough decisions. And that was a really unique time, because you'd go in every day, you didn't know what was going to happen. You were reading the headlines to figure out what tomorrow would bring. And it was intense.
That concludes part 1 of Jeff's interview with Steve McClain. Be sure to listen to part 2 as Steve continues his story with his life after working at American Century, here on the Corporate Couch.